consenting for your name, because immediately. For those at home viewing the webcast, I'd like to inform you that if you look above the video, you will see a resources tab. Select this and a link to the agenda will appear in the right hand side. This will allow you to open the agenda in PDF form and follow the discussion and debate. I'm just going to make a brief comment now that there will be a special meeting of this committee on the 30th of November. The purpose of the meeting is to enable Policy and Resources to consider and approve a formal
Thank you, Chair. Can I declare an interest, please, in Section D on the referrals from committees, and it's down here as item 12 in relation to Hilbury Island. I know a family with whom I have close contact with, and they have one of the houses on Hilbury Island, so therefore I'll withdraw on that. Okay.
Thank you. Any others?
Yeah, I have a declaration of interest on agenda item 6, the Household Support Fund. The company I work for, we've put in an application form to receive funds, hopefully to receive some funding for that. So, and the other is anything.
Oh, okay. We've gone back to signing, apparently. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So the next agenda item is public and member questions. I haven't received any public questions. I haven't received any statements or petitions, nor have I received any questions by members. So we will move on to the first substantive item, which is key and other decisions. Agenda item 6, Household Support Fund. Mark Campbell, you're going to come and talk us through this. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, just over 3 million, which breached the threshold for an officer's decision, so it has to come to P&R committee for ratification. You'll see that we've approached it in the same way that we've done previous grants, and the feedback we've had on the allocation of all those and the distribution of those has been really well received, including by DWP. We followed the same approach to that, and I think, or I hope members will agree that the spread of the use of that grant is innovative and supports as wide a
as you said. Could you explain to me about contingency, and how contingency is going to be spent? Because there's 337,000, which is a lot. That's question one. And question two, I know when we started, there were certainly questions about Wirral South, parts of Wirral South and parts of Wirral West in terms of the infrastructure to get the food and the various elements to the people who needed it. Yeah, through the small grants and so on, through some of the organisations. Wonder if you could talk us through a bit about what's been done. And I know you have done a lot to actually put in place the infrastructure more broadly across Wirral to support the spending of these resources. So, first of all, it's a really well done. Second, it's how are you going to spend the contingency? And third, it's whether you can share with us what you've done to increase the infrastructure so that, you know, places where there are pockets of real need in areas where there's
might appear so large is because in speaking to a range of partners, including a number of community groups and third sector organisations, we're unsure where the actual pressures will be as we move through winter. We know there will be pressures. So given the wide range of the scope that we're spending, and there's some new elements to it this time round, and some quite challenging and tricky issues, such as the DWP decided to include this time round that certain people would be able to make claims for things like vehicle repairs if the vehicle was critical to them going to the beginning of the response to this. The uptake and the engagement with the third sector and the community across the borough from in some areas what was quite a slow start. I've got to say now we're probably in my opinion probably the most mature position we've ever been in terms of relationships across the whole of the borough. We've not worked any of these grants in isolation from each other, so we've worked with the Holiday Activity Fund and other groups, and through those, through the relationships with the schools and the community groups that Simon's trying to work at and build up those relationships through the schools themselves.
Councillor Gilchrist, you're next.
Well, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm a governor of a school, primary school, in an area where there are levels of deprivation. So I asked this out of interest to see how the system will work, because I know how our teachers and head teachers recognise the difficulties that families have and are keen to support them. The report does talk about a number of schools. Figure of schools is given in one section, 45, another 37, I think. And since that is a high proportion, a third of our schools and more in areas where people need help and children need support and need support with food and clothing so they can actually devote time and settle in school, and their hunger might have detracted from their ability to learn, so would keeping warm at home the budget appears to be an area of the budget needs more money than is laid out here. There is the flexibility to put more into it when we can study how things are actually happening in practice. Thank you.
Councillor Nolan.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just again, thank you very much, Mark, for that report. Very much aware that this is an excellent programme which should go forward and should meet an awful lot of identified need across the borough over the next few months. It is a tight time frame, and again, very much very welcome piece of work. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Councillor Nolan and then, yeah, thanks. Sorry, Councillor McManus.
Thanks, Chair. Mark, I want to be careful what I say, because obviously the organisation I work for has received funding from previous tranches of funds. But as somebody who works on the ward I represent, I think it definitely the thanks should go to you and your team, in particular Caroline Langdon and Joe Burrell. I'd like to earmark out. But as well, I think that we need to look at the added value that's come from this, because community organisations have worked together closer than they have before. And in particular, if I think of my ward,
realised again that there is money here allocated to Merseyside Fire and Rescue, and clearly as a member of that authority I should have declared an interest, but taking that out of it, just wanted a quick comment really, just to say, you know, if ever there was wanting a fine example of true partnership working, that's clearly on show here, and just wanted to congratulate you, Mark, really, and bringing that all together, because the number of groups who are actually going to take along these allocations that they've got to the benefit of Wirral residents from all different sources. Obviously it's so varied, but a fine example of true partnership working. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think as I suppose the lead officer in here, I sometimes feel a little bit humbled by this.
Okay, so I'd just like to add my thanks, really. I think it's a bit bittersweet, you know, when I read the list there, because the fact that we're here in in the 21st century and people can't afford to pay for school uniforms for their children or heat or feed them is telling, but that's a whole separate debate, and I want to thank you as well, and your team, for helping our residents in most need. So I think committee are overwhelmingly supportive of this, but I will do the formal bit. I'll move that we agree the recommendations. I think we just have, haven't we? I think I just have in my roundup.
You can if you want to, or we can note it in the minutes.
We note it in the minutes.
Members. This is a report just to update members on the current progress being made in respect to Birkenhead Market, and to just seek some authority to move the project forward. So just a small bit of background. So the market plans are integral to what we want to achieve in the Birkenhead area. Town centre area. It's always been the intention of the council to drive forward a new market, to be at the vanguard of that regeneration. And we've looked at a number of options in order to facilitate that. What I would just bring to members' attention is, in the course of the last 12 months, with the that would disrupt business, how that would disrupt the overall market activity, and we had a number of meetings during the early part of the summer, throughout the summer, with traders to work through some of those issues and to listen to some of those issues in more detail. So we went away, looked at the proposals, and decided that temporary market wouldn't be the best solution, but we looked at where we could actually come forward there with a permanent solution. So rather than going to the temporary solution and with the current traders and the community there, there was a very positive response to this. There was a few concerns that it would be at the edge of town, and what we need to do now is work with traders and the tenants of the market to make sure that they understand the wider plans, so the plans to improve connectivity from Birkenhead Central train station, take down the flyovers, create a new community in Hine Street, and then also create the Dock Branch Park initiative that I've brought before members previously as well. So all of that needs to be sort of put together in ongoing dialogue with the traders. But what I'm asking for this evening is that members authorise that the development on that site, but also bring forward the balance of the site for residential development as well. And through a piece of feasibility work that we've done, we know that we could actually fit the market on there with some new public realm improvements, as well as a new residential development which would help us to achieve the relevant grant outcomes. So in the report it also recommends just some authority to me to be able to negotiate that further with Liverpool City Region Combined Authority. On that note, Chair, I won't take any more time and I'm just open to questions if that's okay.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, thanks. And this has all been agreed, Tony. Yeah. Would say no, you're not allowed to have a market for within 5 miles of, it's, King, whoever he was, said in whenever it was 1527 that you couldn't have a market within 5 miles and so on. In terms of the arrangements and the running of the market and the management of the market, will we be able to use our influence to be a bit more flexible and a bit more realistic? So, if someone in West Kirby wants to run a farmer's market, we won't have the market objecting to that and stopping it happening. Because I think one of the great things about Wirral, there's so many of these farmers markets, close produce and all that being developed. It would be a shame if some of that growth and that innovation is stunted by the market being a bit heavy-handed. So, just for me.
And I've already beat you to it with list cards as well. I've raised exactly the same point with Alan and list cards. So, Alan, if you want to come back on that.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So, a really good question, Councillor Green. So when we acquired the market back in 2018,
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Oh, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Gilchrist.
I'm really seeking assurances because of the High Streets Fund, the future High Streets Fund, which is giving us considerable assistance and also helping pay for some of the staff to design and do all this work, that we will meet the deadline of March 2024 and get all the accounts and everything dusted off before then, so we can get the money from the outside organisations to help us.
Yes, Councillor Gilchrist, there is a funding deadline for future High Streets which is detailed in the report. So it does remain a risk to be able to
Councillor Cleary?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thanks, Alan, for the report. And it's encouraging to see that we've finally found a solution that people can really coalesce around. I think it's got broad levels of support. So we got there in the end, which is really good. I've got a couple of questions. I mean, you mentioned about the issues with the market traders, the existing market traders, and communicating with them. And obviously we're in a better place now. I think it's fair to say that market traders will be watching this evening's report and committee meeting, and obviously there's a lot of exempt information, which is entirely understandable. But you mentioned about dialogue going forward. Find the sentiments there. But obviously, words are one thing. We need to put those into action. And at a previous Regen committee, I know when Councillor Gleaves moved that we look again at the office development and look at the renewable energy input into that, which doesn't exist. It was disappointing that she didn't get any backing from any other members of the committee. And I think this is where we need to kind of step up in terms of displaying that we really are serious about creating a climate resilient and net zero carbon town of the future. You know, bill costs for zero carbon are about 5 to 7% more than standard costs. And I suppose I'm looking for a bit of reassurance here that we are going to take this a bit more seriously when we build the new market and build this residential scheme. I know we've got good
last 12 months in terms of engagement with the Tenants Association in the market as well. We've tried to really engage on a very much a one-to-one basis. So as you know, because you've attended, we've gone to pains to speak to all traders. And we try to improve the communications as well with the Tenants Association. We're just keeping an information flow going, which I think has led to the improvements which you referred to. So we've learned an awful lot in that space and continue to have that engagement. In terms of the day-to-day operations of the market, it's the accessibility to that building and the improved connectivity of the town centre as well. So we really hope to work with them on that wider plan and picture, as well as taking into account some of their concerns. And there's some items which they've asked me to consider, which I'll go back back to them next time we meet. So overall, I think we've picked up the communication in a much more structured way, and hopefully the traders and the Tenants Association would feel the same on that. Just in terms of the environmental credentials of the scheme, the design brief that we've got, we've now set a wider framework, haven't we? So Birkenhead 2040 sets movement on our district heating system, which might be able to connect into the town centre plans. That was unavailable. We weren't able to do that when we were bringing forward the first phase of the office development. And I do note your frustration, really. And sometimes when we've got a cost envelope for some of these developments, we're really struggling because of the viability gap that exists in Birkenhead. If it was easy on that basis, then we would have done some of this before. So we're really trying to plug that gap using a mixture of public money, and we are successful at the moment in bringing in government money and other public sector support, but using the council's covenant strength as well, so we can cover that. And it is just making sure, as you say, that that cost expenditure to meet some of those increased standards do get built in from the design from the outset, so we're not trying to retrofit that at the end. So I take on board all your comments, and hopefully the work you've seen from the team is starting to show that. And the new offices, I know they're not meeting the BREEAM outstanding, but they certainly met the BREEAM excellent standard, and we did move some way towards the BREEAM outstanding as well. So we're really trying where we can to make sure these buildings come up to the standard, and certainly moving forward.
And in conclusion, Chair, I would like to move the recommendations. Thank you.
And I'm happy to second if no one else wants to speak. Are you happy to agree the recommendations by assent? And just a big thank you, Alan, on this, and also wider regeneration of Birkenhead. It's certainly gathering some pace nationally. I'm reading about Birkenhead in the Guardian, how it's like literally the hippest place to be at the minute. So we've all known that for years. List cards are close seconds. It is, it really is. So thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is section B, budget and performance management. So we've got 3 reports here. Cher, would you like to speak to the budget monitoring for quarter 2?
A report for which takes us up to the end of September. The position is actually an improved position from that of quarter 1, which was the end of June. This is for a number of reasons, and it's mainly actually due to additional funding received in year that we didn't know we were going to receive last quarter and at the start of the year. We've also had some reduced income pressures, and there's also been an impact on the ability to recruit to posts. So we are finding it difficult to actually recruit to posts. This is not just a Wirral thing, but as I understand, it's a bit of a national thing at the moment. And as a result of that, we have some posts remaining vacant for longer than usual while we were able to actually get that recruitment in place and to get those employees in place. There's also been a change in the value of the exceptional financial support, or you will know it as the capitalisation directive. And again, this is due to additional funding that we've received in year after we submitted capitalisation at the start of the year. And as a result of that, that is why the capitalisation or the exceptional financial support will reduce by another 3 million as well. Members, of course, will be aware that if any of our COVID-19 pressures that we did estimate at the start of the year do reduce, then we only have one option, which is to reduce the value of the exceptional financial support for that. So just to take you through quickly through the summaries in the individual directorates, in the report, within adult care and health, there continues to be a small forecast favourable variance there. And again, this is as a result of vacancies and some continued additional funding from the NHS for hospital discharges. Within the corporate office, there is a small pressure on marketing income, which is as a result of curbside and roadside marketing signs, which we had a project to implement those, and since COVID that's not progressed, and we've not been able to tender for those, and there was an income pressure as a result of that. However, we have applied for the extension to the government compensation scheme for sales fees and charges. We have applied to recoup some income from that, and when we receive that information, hopefully that will offset a bit of that pressure. Within children, families and education, again, we've had some additional income, and this is resulting in a favourable year-end forecast of around about £750,000. And this is mainly grant funding that the Children's Families and Education Directorate have applied for, where they can actually charge the cost of posts to that grant funding. And they also are suffering as well from recruitment issues, and they have some vacant posts that are being held vacant at the moment. As at the end of September as well, the Directorate are managing to hold a pressure on children's social care and safeguarding. So at the start of the year, they did anticipate that there was a pressure. This is now not anticipated to materialise in year, but they are forecasting that actually there will be pressures next year in 22-23 as a result of the longer impact of COVID, and there may be pressures on the budget there for children's safeguarding and social care. Within the, children, families and education, they are stabilising in terms of looked after children as well, which is actually favourable, and that's actually currently not presenting a pressure in year this year. Just in terms of law and governments, they're forecasting a small favourable variance to year end, and this is again as a result of recruitment difficulties, and this is something, as I say, it's a pattern we're seeing right across the whole council and across the country as well. And they've also received some additional funding as a result of the joint elections that happened at the start of the year in May. Within neighbourhoods, neighbourhoods are currently forecasting a deficit or an adverse variance at the end of September of 741,000. This is actually an improved position on their Q1 forecast, which was just over £1 million. So they have actually been trying, to try and offset the pressures that they have within the Directorate. They do still have pressures, there is an adverse variance there, and they do have pressures as a result of reduced income on car parking. There is reduced income on community patrol, and also on the design team as well. Back up to pre-COVID levels, and also they've had a reduction in the waste to contract inflation as well, so there is an ability to offset some of those pressures there. Within regeneration and Place Directorate, there is a small forecast variance. Again, same pattern. This is as a result of vacancies. These are actually vacancies being held pending a new structure following, obviously you will be aware of the successful bids of significant funding that the Directorate has got in for regeneration. And there is a pending restructure to enable the capacity to be in place to actually deliver that programme. Within resources, there is an adverse variance at the moment, which is due to a reduction of achievement of income targets. In revenues and benefits with court, actually buying back these services. So it is having an impact on the income that they actually receive from schools. And one kind of thing that we hadn't sort of fully forecast was the impact of us sort of remote working, digital working on the centralised print service. And what we're finding is because we're not printing as much in-house, it's actually resulting in an unachieved or the income target not being fully achievable. This is an internal recharge, but the print service do actually generate income from other directorates. And where we're not actually printing as much, they're not achieving that target. There is some information included in the report about the additional funding received for COVID-19 activities since the last quarter. And as I mentioned in my introduction, the value of exceptional financial support required to balance the budget in the year is forecast to reduce from the original sum, which was requested, of 10.7 million, and that's now down to a forecast of 7.2 million. As I said at the start, the reason for this is we've received some additional funding in the year that we didn't know we were due to receive at the start of the year when we applied for this. £1 million of that related to homelessness. So we had originally £1 million worth of homelessness pressure as a result of COVID that was contributing to that request for exceptional financial support. And the homelessness team have received around about just slightly under £1 million worth of funding. So that actually effectively wipes out that pressure. And there's also a £2 million
there. So I don't know why would that not be offset somewhere else?
Yeah, so there will be a service review of the printing directorate. Okay. So at the moment we do have an income target for printing. So if one directorate requires printing, the printing service will charge for it. There's a lot of fixed costs within the print section, so there's a lot of machines that we can't sort of switch off or get rid of if the printing reduces. It does require a bit more of a longer term sort of review, and we are undertaking that at the moment to see whether something can be done to alleviate that.
I don't think anyone else wishes to speak, so I'm just going to move that we Phil Gilchrist.
Right, thank you, Chair. I'm not quick on my pins. In the report, and it follows from what I was talking to Alan Evans about before, and on page 56, section 3.7.2 in regeneration, there's a reference to temporary interim staff are hoping to ensure grant funding bids are achieved and that projects continue to be delivered. So I can see that as an important form of investment in order to get some of our regeneration ambitions completed in time or fully up and running. I wanted, though, to ask about interim staff in general, because the last figures I saw, and I appreciate that Cher said that there can be places difficult to recruit in some positions, difficult because of restructuring to recruit and everything else. But the last figures I saw suggested there were between 30 and 40 interims in the authority in some form or other, and not understanding all the recharges to grants and things. If there weren't those kind of recharges, we could be spending 15, 16,000 pounds a day. But it's fortunate in the case of regeneration, we're able to reclaim so much back by charging against projects and grants. So the number of interims in the authority, some are going and they've done sterling work in children's services. I'm just looking for assurances that we will do all we can. If we're told there's a necessity for an interim, look very carefully at it given our circumstances.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Gilchrist. Yeah, there are more interims than we've had at the moment within the authority, and that is specifically as a result of the difficulty to recruit. You know, we're not able to sort of carry out our duties with a reduced workforce, so we have to have the capacity within the workforce. What we are trying to do, so we have gone out for recruitment a couple of times. We have got a recruitment campaign on now with HR, so what they've done is actually developed a better campaign for us. There's a it's there's a lot more digital. We're going out to a lot more places. We're trying to get a lot more reach. So hopefully that is proving a little bit better. We've only just started that, so it is proving a bit better in terms of being able to recruit actual permanent staff. But you know, we are trying our best to recruit permanent staff, so we don't have to use as many programme forecast spend at the end of June was 79.7 million. And at the end of September, there has been some movement on this forecast, and it now assumes a spend of 77.6 million. So it is less, and we have reprofiled some schemes into future years, but it's only a very small percentage. It's just over 2% of the schemes that we have profiled into next year. The report, provides a general sort of update on the progress on the main schemes by directorate. It also provides information as to within these schemes where they have been reprofiled, why they have been reprofiled, and also the anticipated timeline for completion as well. As I say, there isn't much change from last quarter's report. There are some small variances across all committees, and the most significant variances are included for you to see in Appendix 2. We have included again a full detailed review of the capital programme, so that took place during the summer, and this was really to make sure that we had real robust forecasts in. So we've spoken to each of the individual programme managers who are managing the schemes. We've asked them to sort of recheck the profile of their spend to make sure that they will be spending the capital programme on their schemes in year, and if not, to really to ask us to reprofile those into future years. So it's been a lot more of a robust review, and I think as you can see from Q1 to Q2, because there is little movement, that sort of process and check is actually sort of helping in terms of the difference in the capital programme now. Some good news is there has been some additional grant funding that we've received at Q2. There's 3.3 million in total. This is made up of 100,000 for the Mells Coastal Defence feasibility, and also 3.2 million for the future high streets in New Ferry. The full capital programme is actually included within Appendix 4. This continues to be fully funded, so the capital programme is always fully funded, and there are some minor environments as well this quarter, and these are included within Appendix 3. I'll just pause there. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Green.
Yes, again, thanks for the report. They might have, and how can they engage with the council? So the request is really, I note it in here, I know what they're saying about profiling. Is it possible, maybe through the Chief Executive, we can get the whoever it is that's running this particular programme to get in touch so we can speak with, so I can have a conversation with them about the impact it's going to have on the locality and also on businesses and particularly the RNLI, if that's possible.
Absolutely, Councillor Green. I know you don't want to raise it in here, so we'll bring that because David's in the room, but we'll get the relevant officers with David to come and brief the ward members, or who would you like briefing? Do you think? Okay, fine.
The key thing for me is people like the RNLI are trying to engage, but no one's, and there's some quite serious issues that they would like, or concerns they'd like talking through.
Okay, we'll do exactly that.
Councillor Gilchrist.
Thank you, Chair. I'm on page 87, if I may, in Appendix 2. Having once, 18 months, 2 years ago, started discussions about the Urban Tree Challenge Fund, and when Mark Smith was here and also other officers who've retired or members who've retired as well, the Council was very successful in getting grants to get this scheme under the go. I've seen a very encouraging email which says we've got more grants from other sources coming into our hands in order to plant more trees. I'm looking for assurances that the deferral of the spending on the Urban Tree Challenge Fund, that will be carried forward and that we will be able to get on with it in an appropriate planting season in the next municipal year. Because the need to plant trees and tackle carbon issues and improve the appearance of our borough and improve air quality is a high priority for all of us.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Gilchrist. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the funding has been reprofiled, but I can provide that assurance that it goes into next year and it will still be there to enable that project to go ahead.
Okay, thanks everyone. No one else wants to speak? Councillor Robinson.
Sorry, could I just ask, please, the recommendations to approve the revised capital programme, do we need to put in, obviously subject to the fuller review?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So the revised capital programme, Councillor Robinson, is the programme that you have within the papers. So it's revised from Q1. So the capital programme that you have there is actually recommended for this evening. That makes sense.
Okay, everyone, so I'm going to move that we agree the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Thanks a lot. Councillor Naomi. Chair, it's you again. You're going to come in on our Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, so as you say, this is the standard half-year report on the Council's Treasury Management activity. This report is recommended to be presented to the committee on the half-yearly basis by CIPFA, the Chartered Institute Public Finance and Accountancy, and they have a code of practice on Treasury Management that asks for the strategy to come annually and then a recommendation for the half-yearly review to come to the committee as well as best practice. The report provides a lot of background really on the current economic position of the country in terms of the growth and the inflation as at the end of Q2, which is the end of September. And this is important to note for the committee as it could have an impact on the returns on the investments that we have. In terms of the council's position for borrowing and the investment that the council holds, since the start of the year, the investment portfolio has increased by 3.4 investments that we would, the levels of interest that we would receive on our investments, they're very low at the moment, so it's much more prudent for us to actually use our internal funding for borrowing rather than investing it and then going out and borrowing and paying additional interest on the borrowing. So the report provides types of investments in Table 5, the different types of investments that we have. And as I say, Chair, it's just the normal sort of half-yearly report. There isn't much change from the previous report. There's not much activity that's actually happened in the period. So I'll just kind of pause there if anybody has any specific questions on that. Thank you.
Councillor Green.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Nolan and I will probably remember the days when Treasury management used to provide significant savings and benefit to the council's budget. It was always able to, by using Treasury management, to actually reduce the amount of revenue we had to raise from the council taxpayer, which is always a good thing if at all possible. Two questions really. One would be, again, can you reassure everyone that we're not doing, I know it's in short-term loans at mate rates to other local authorities. I think we've reduced that quite significantly now, haven't we? The other point, well done on reducing the overall borrowings. That's got to be a good thing. And then finally, Lobo Loans. Strikes me that Lobo Loans remain a major risk to the authority on a, for a considerable period. And I just wondered, we started some work. Councillor Lewis and I started some work when I was chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee about Lobo and what we've got ourselves into and how, or what the council got itself into. No one in this room, I don't think. And how do we get ourselves out of it? So, any progress on what we can do with regards to reducing the risk and the cost to the authority of these Lobo loans? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Before I bring you in, I'm really pleased that we brought up mate rates because, let's be honest, that old chestnut's been knocking around for many a year. And this is a really good opportunity, Chair, to explain exactly what these loans are and how they impact us, or if indeed they make us money, which is what you've just hoped that our Treasury management strategy would indeed do. So,
yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to provide a kind of a brief explanation. So, we do. So this is best described as using your own savings for this. So where the council has surplus money in its bank account, so where you would have surplus money in your own bank account that you will spend in the future, but you don't need at the moment, what you would tend to do is to move that into a savings account and for a short period of time generate a bit of interest on it. Also, if you find that actually you need more money in your bank account, what you would do is go and get an overdraft in the short term and pay a small amount of interest on that rather than getting a loan. So this is the same principle really for inter-authority lending. It's not just Wirral that do it, it's any council that do it as well. So where we actually find that if there's an occasion where we have a lot of money paid out of our bank account, so a good example of this is on payday when all the salaries are paid, we may not actually have enough money in our bank account to cover all the salaries. So what we do is we actually go to another local authority and say, can you lend us some money, maybe for a week, maybe just overnight, maybe for a short period of time, until we get some money in our account, and the other local authority will say, yep, you can have that. Same thing for if we have surplus funds in our account. So say say, for example, if we have a council tax or a business rates direct debit run, got lots of money in our account, we don't make any interest on that. We don't have a high interest account. So what we will do is we'll say to other local authorities, does anybody want this money? And then they can pay us interest on behalf of that. Now, in terms of the interest rate, and this could be any local authority, this is managed by the money market, so we have a broker that does this on our behalf. And in terms of the interest rate is set as the interest rate on the day, so we don't have any influence over the interest rates that are set. I hope that kind of explains it.
I'm fairly sure that you knew that already, but hope you did.
Well, I didn't know that we have to borrow money to pay our staff. I must be honest, that was a new one on me. But there you go. And Lobo Loans?
Yeah, Lobo Loans are... so Lobos is a lender option, borrower option. And these are loans that were entered into many years ago, sort of 80s and 90s, where the interest rates were really, really high. So sort of, you know, talking about 15, 16%. So what the council did at the time was they entered into a long-term fixed rate loan with banks and different financial institutions. The interest rate was much significant penalties, and sometimes the penalties are equivalent to the size of the whole loan itself. So we could be paying 100% extra. Now there is the borrower, so the borrower has an option as well, and the borrower could actually cancel those loans at any time. They could redeem them and say to the council, if you want to redeem these, you can. But what that means for the borrower at the moment is they're getting 8% interest on those loans, whereas actually the interest rate in the market is very, very low. So the borrower, in times where there is low interest, would never ask us to redeem that loan. And for ourselves, as I say, if we wanted to do that, there's huge penalties on that. However, we have been talking to, as Councillor Green says, we have been talking to our financial advisors and trying to negotiate some of these, to get out of some of these loans with the banks and the building societies. And we have done this successfully over a past couple of years, but only for the small value ones. So we have got some significant value ones. There is a negotiation taking place, as I say, still. Our advisors are still negotiating on our behalf. And the benefit for us to do that, we would still have to pay penalties if we wanted to get out of the loans. But actually, over the longer term of the loan, even paying a penalty could actually generate more savings from us from keeping the loan going. So to answer your question, we're still in negotiation.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gilchrist.
Oh, yeah. Well, Councillor Green is sitting next to me, so this is an old story. And like you, Chair, I don't like the term mates rates. One of the loans that this council made was to Uttlesford District Council, which is pretty well all Tory. And we lent them £5 million in 2000. Now I looked this up for you. It was 2017 and 18. So as I accept Chair's explanation, because I had a table one time of what interest we'd earned on these things. It is a matter of cash flow. So there are times when you have to nail an old story and say that it's now run out of space.
I think it did that years ago, to be honest, Councillor Gilchrist. But just for the avoidance of doubt, then, the mate rate thing is a complete nonsense. The interest rate is set on the day. We don't adjust it for neighbouring councils. Okay, and have we ever had a council default on any of that?
You're correct for the first, Chair, and not as far as I'm aware, I would say no.
Do we make money, essentially, do we make money from doing this?
We do, yes. If we are investing, we do.
Which is, I think, Councillor Green, what you wanted our Treasury management strategy to do was make money.
I think if you recall my question, I know people are quite sensitive about this sort of thing. My actual point was to share the opportunity to say the amount of money that we are giving out to or loaning out to other authorities has come down, and I use mate rates as shorthand because we all know what we meant.
Okay, well, we'll draw a line under that, really. The fact that it's reduced is not always great because it means we've reduced our ability to earn income by that. Councillor Nolan, do you want to come in on this one?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Green. I think we all know what you meant to do with that question. Just to say that the Lobo Loans, in my defence, they may be at 7 or 8%, but the prevailing interest rate at that time was about 15% when we took those out. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Councillor Cameron.
Sorry, I don't want to prolong this. I just want a reference point for all the numbers that are flying around. What is the interest rate on the capitalisation directive?
I will provide that to you separately, Councillor and the rest of the committee. Yeah, I don't have that to hand at the moment.
Okay, thanks, but it's nowhere near 7 to 8, I hope, because that seems like a horrific figure.
No, it isn't. No, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to move that we agree the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Thanks, everyone. We agree by assent? Yeah. I'm going to move on to next agenda item, which is it's a recommendation from the shareholder board. And sorry, I've just completely skipped our work programme. Here we go. Number 11 is the work programme. Vicky, you're going to talk to that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members, the purpose of this report, as I'm sure you're aware, is to ensure that you have the opportunity to contribute to the delivery of the committee's annual work programme. The report lists the items.
Environment, Climate Emergency and Transport Committee, appointment to Hilbury Island Nature Reserve Management Committee. Vicky, you're going to present this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members, this is a referral from the Environment, Climate Emergency and Transport Committee in relation to the appointment of members and named deputies to the Hilbury Island Management Committee for the 2021-2022 municipal year. The Management Committee is made up of elected members, council officers, Hilbury Bird Observatory, the Friends of Hilbury Islands Group, the Archaeological Group and the island's residents who have some holiday homes there, and provides an opportunity for stakeholders to meet to discuss issues relating to the management of the islands with members and officers. The Constitution says that 8 members will be appointed to the Management Committee. The membership does not have to be politically proportionate. In the last municipal year, the membership was 4 Conservative members, 2 Labour members and 2 Liberal Democrat members. However, members can be appointed to the committee on a different basis or on a politically proportionate basis if the committee so wishes.
Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. I don't think this needs much discussion. I'd just like to move that the recommendation is that we stick with the Constitution and the status quo.
Councillor Nolan, seconded.
I'm just going to declare an interest. I just realised. I think I'm chairman of it.
Anyone else? Councillor Jones, didn't you have a spell of 18 months when you lived on Hilbury Island?
I did indeed, Chair. In the 70s. It just goes to show the extent of your memory.
Well, you only tell me before, so it's not really a great testimony to great memory.
I would like to, if the circumstances dictate, of my services, if the committee members are looking for additional resources. Okay. Thanks, Chair.
So, Councillor Anderson moved that we accept. Councillor Nolan seconded that. Do we have an agreement by assent? Okay, thank you. Next up is a referral from the shareholder board. Essential request for funding. Vicky, you're going to present this.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to a referral from the shareholder board in relation to a request from Essential Community Interest Company, a company which is wholly owned equally by Wirral Council and Cheshire West and Chester Council. The request is for financial support due to trading and financial difficulties the company has experienced primarily as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. This matter has been referred to Policy and Resources because it's a matter of business that falls under the responsibility of the main committee. And the recommendation from the shareholder board is to give approval for COVID grant funding of £643,000 and an interest-bearing loan of £557,000, and for the Director of Resources to provide a letter of comfort confirming the agreed financial support. And I'm sure the Director of Resources will be happy to answer any specific questions members may have in relation to this matter.
So, Councillor Green, Councillor Nolan, you're both on the shareholder board. Did you want to speak to this, or?
I'm happy to try and speak to it, Chair. If you wish, I'm always happy to let Yvonne go first.
I think that's a no.
Okay.
Not to you, Speaker.
Oh, right. In that case, I think this has been really a tricky issue, I think it's fair to say, Jeanette. We come to it, I don't think anyone expected to have to deal with COVID and so on. But I'd say this about Essential. They have done an amazing piece of work through the pandemic, making sure that, you know, schools had the meals and children were fed. And I think there was reference to it a little bit earlier as well, the broadness of the service that they've offered. I think, for me, the key thing around this is to make sure we still have the services being delivered to our schools. I was quite taken as well, because a lot of the areas where they have been most affected is the overnight activity for schools and the school visits and so on. And I was particularly taken by David Armstrong, who mentioned to us at the time, one of the meetings, is the fact that that Essential had opened up their facilities for people who had to be separated and taken out of the area and given support that way. So, notwithstanding this, it was quite difficult. I think it's fair to say we had to negotiate quite hard with Cheshire West and Chester also in terms of the resources. I think given the circumstances, to ensure that the company stays viable, continues to provide the excellent services it does to Wirral schools, that we felt this was the best solution to use. So it's not taking money off other services as such, because we're keen that shouldn't happen, but it would come from specifically from the COVID grant, as I recall, Chair, and I think that's why we took the decision we did in the end. Happy to be corrected if I missed something.
Is that a fair summary, Chair?
Yep, absolutely correct. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak on this one? Okay, I'm going to move that we accept the recommendation from the shareholder board. Do I have a seconder? Oh, okay. Are we happy to agree that by assent? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next one. It's the minutes of the shareholder board, so I'm just going to ask members to note the minutes of the shareholder board. I am going to move that we approve them. Do I have a seconder on that one? Okay, we all happy to agree? The minutes, thank you. 15 is minutes
course of action referred to in minute 6 about employment appeals. I look forward to the report that our officers will bring back on that one. I didn't approve of that course of action being taken. I thought it better that the matter was not proceeded with. So in terms of minuting this, can I be regarded as voting against that particular item?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Gilchrist. We'll note that for you. Yeah.
Okay. So I was kind of at the point where I was asking the members to approve the minutes. Seconded. Agreed. Okay, thank you everyone. So we're into of Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended to that Act. The public interest test has been applied and favours exclusion. So I am going to move that we exempt those items. Do I have a seconder?